You could also look to first pick something like the Ezreal, very powerful for 1xn and very versatile as a bot laner too. You can pair it up with, as saw the Karma for hyper lane bully. You can also go towards that Leona too. That Ezreal, it will probably just easily get snapped up by 1xn now. It is the Lucian again. I'd expect Tristana Ezreal being hovered over for the side of TT. Stuff like Leona also being very powerful hit too.
Yeah, Leona are also priority junglers if that's something that Beichuan wants to try and look towards. I do enjoy the meta at the minute. I feel like there are a lot of directions you can go. But honestly, with the way 1xn played last game, why you wouldn't lock in the Ezreal, I really don't know.
And you know, maybe they can just hold the support counterpick for last as well if they want at this point. Yeah, Tristana's completely fine. I've said this a couple of times over the last few series. Tristana has been nerfed. Normally, this is a bad thing for Tristana players. Because Tristana was 100% ban rate, this is good for Tristana players who are good at the pick. The nerfs don't make Tristana irrelevant, they make her less obnoxious, but she is more available now. She's not on that ban list nearly as much, so Ucal gets access to that one. We'll see whether he can get some value out of that. Whereas on the other side, that is a strong AP jungler, locked in for MilkyWay, one of his best, actually, from this split.
And honestly, I way prefer this to the Maokai. You know, I talked about last playoffs, they kind of went for MilkyWay being a little bit more utility in playoffs. I didn't like it then either. I like MilkyWay on a carry, and Lilia is definitely among the list of the best in the meta. Excited to see what MilkyWay can do with that pick as the Leona comes through for Feather.
Okay, so the Leona gives you some tanky frontline. That's the important thing here. The Cassante has already been taken away by ZDZ. Now you potentially could go towards a Kennen yourself. Hoya's a big player of that Kennen. I would expect that to be one of FPX's bans. Maybe that one and maybe Camille as well if you want to save ZDZ's lane. TT are going to be giving up support counterpick for this, so they probably want to ban away stuff like the Braum. Yeah, like that can actually give your Leona some problems. We learned the power of support counterpick just in the very last draft.
We certainly did. The Braum gone immediately. Poppy also taken off of the board. Or if they thought Hoya was maybe going to go towards that to try and deal with the Cassante up in the top lane with Fortune removed as well. Really, TT trying to set up for a strong bot lane duo for 1xn and Feather. Still quite a lot of options available there though for Dr. Clive.
They could go towards something Callista-y if they would like to. They could go towards that, really trying to hammer down. Kai'Sa's also not bad there too. They have options, so and also Varus has been making his way back into the meta too with his changes to his passive and Wit's End as well, making him very, very powerful if you block in very heavy AP compositions. Not the case here for TT. They're not going to get themselves that Kennen, which would have been one of the other choice counters into that Cassante. We did say that Camille could potentially be in there. Hoya has preferred to be on tank utility duty though, so something like this Mordekaiser would be more towards that. So it's going to be a little bit of that half tank frontline.
Deokdam does go for the Kai'Sa in the end, and Life brings out the Rakan. So a bit more convincing engage there for FPX, I think needed at the end of this composition with a Lilia and a Cassante as your other kind of potential engage tools. You really do need some kind of snap engage. Now TT, Beichuan has to decide what he wants to go for, how he wants to approach this game. It'd be a different look, and it's one they're going to lock in. Ivan comes through for Beichuan.
Right, so I was looking at that Nidalee and the brand and thinking, yeah, but what happens if you ever get caught out by CC? The Kai'Sa's going to fly through and that's a problem. Now the Ivan can use that Daisy to block out Kai'Sa W's, the Swell Seeds as well, so you can use that as a bit of a half front line, and you can protect the first person that dived onto. Now you have a Leona who's tanky and Mordekaiser who's somewhat tanky, but the Ivan which buffs that up even more. TT, they look at FPX's comp which says, okay, we're going to dive at you, look for this first big engage with the Lilia and then that Rakan. Let's see if we can absorb the engage and play around our two long-range backliners in the Ezreal and the Tristana. I think this game might be more about structured team fights from TT than it was in that first game. FPX, though, still really got themselves a lot of scrapping potential with the Lucian, the Kai'Sa, the Rakan, all of these champions which don't necessarily need that 5v5 to flourish.
Let's see what he can make happen here. It's going to be an interesting one to see this Ivan from Beichuan. He's played it once in his career, and we'll see if he can make it work again for himself. But it's going to be tough. I mean, he played it against OMG to make it into playoffs. Can he repeat that performance? It looked pretty good in that game. I'm hoping it can look good once again. But only time will tell. I mean, Ivan, it's not a champion we've been good at in the LPL, but it does feel like we're having a little bit of an Ivan renaissance across the league right now. TN brought it in, and ever since, everybody's been looking towards a new growth, if you will, yeah. But can ThunderTalk turn it into 2 in a row? FPX, the Phoenix. I mean, lightly singed at the moment. 0-1 down. Will they set a blaze here? Will TT take over?
敌军还有30秒到达战场，碾碎他们。
You know, if they'd picked a Maokai support, would they be Tree instead of TT?
Yeah, sure. Like, maybe, I suppose. Yeah, not your best, Nymaera, I'm going to be honest. Not your best.
Thanks. Yeah,
but
it's
honestly,
okay. I'm working on it. We'll save that for, like, later rounds, I guess.
I'd argue that really brutally forced wordplay that's kind of our brand as a duo at this point. I feel like we really lean into the absolutely abhorrent puns.
It's trying to see how far you can push the person on the mics with you to do a forced laugh at something which just clearly isn't funny. that's like one of my favorite brands ever. Go on, Joe, laugh. It's funny. I made a joke.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily subscribe to the forced laugh. I laugh when it's funny. Right now, I'm just laughing at you instead.
Thanks, that's great. That's what I needed today.
Yeah, TT, I think, feeling similarly. Laughing at FPX in the first game, and they were pretty much in command, I'd say pretty much the entire time. A couple of early game plays for FPX, but aside from that, very, very comfortable game for TT. 1xN especially grabbing that MVP, gets his Ezreal once again, has a very strong lane to work with, but I'm looking towards the jungle. I'm looking towards how Beichuan can use this Ivan to try and nullify MilkyWay, who has switched over to it.
I don't know exactly what he can do in the early game with these lanes right now. Feather gonna take a tower shot. Good damage from 1xN though. Jeez, well, look, 1xN makes that trade worth it. I mean, he gets that press the attack. Great stuff from him, but you've got this pushing bot lane that'll help. Of course, Ivan on the first clear is very, very fast at getting himself onto weird parts of the map because his jungle pathing is just so unique if he wants to be. So can Beichuan get himself comboed up with one of these lanes and at least get them into a point where they can be more solid or they can get themselves an early skirmish? That can be very, very important to look through because one of the things that we called out in that first game is MilkyWay not being able to do that. He failed at those early aggressive plays. He will need to have a better look in at that same time on the other side.
I've been keeping my eyes on the top lane as well as Hoya. Locked in this Mordekaiser to deal with the Cassante. Something he's very strong. Look at that win record for 1xN. 8-3 on the Ezreal. That's just this year as well, or maybe even just this summer. I'm not sure. It's been a phenomenal set of Ezreal games for him. We saw a little glimpse of that in game number 1, what 1xN can do. I mean, when he first joined the league, I remember 1xN being this incredible mechanical player, and I feel like today he is absolutely on fire with the mechanics. Great to see him get this pick. I mean, I'm a little surprised FX let him get this pick twice, to be honest, but then there's so many things you need to ban. Can you ban it all, really?
Well, I mean, they've been prioritizing Care's Lucian, and Lucian did work out. I mean, the Lucian pick worked out in isolation for them in that first game. That wasn't necessarily the problem, but 1xN, yeah, maybe it's too much to give that. Ucal might be walking into a mid-jungle here. That's a bit dangerous.
Yeah, that was bold from Ucal. He's forced to flash away, and he will just be chased down. Ucal just gifts MilkyWay 400 gold.
And once again, mid-jungle for FPX, or at least the mid part of that, working out pretty well for FPX early on, but this time it's very much because of Ucal's mistake. And that Tristana, which we said could be potentially powerful, it was bound in that first game, not working out really towards their favor. 2v2 at least working out for TT, which of course happened in that last game too, but they need to keep eyes on this mid lane now. That's not how you want these early games to be going.
I'm just surprised that Ucal, I guess he was trying to stop a potential recall from Care, but just, you know, face planting into that brush, not the way to do it. And MilkyWay happened to be in the area as well. It really just couldn't have got much worse for Ucal. I'm sure he'll be regretting it and scratching his head just as much as we are here on the caster desk. We'll see how that continues to develop. But as you say, Care actually looked good on the Lucian in the previous game. Didn't really manage to impact the fights, though, was the big issue of the pick. With a Lilia, though, and with a Rakan as well, with a Cassante, it does feel like a bit of a shorter range comp. I feel like he'll have more space to get in amongst these plays when you've got everyone else diving into.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing which can stop that potentially is really good Ivan play. We'll see how well Beichuan can stop that later on, but then that becomes a completely different question later on. So, let's go talk about that jungle matchup then. We'll talk about Beichuan, MilkyWay. MilkyWay got himself that first blood, which of course gives him that faded ashes on that first recall as well. Very important breakpoint. You always want to get that. Really massively increases your clear speed. And Beichuan on the other side, we said, hey, first clear can be very powerful for this champion. Didn't manage to have that influence. Not necessarily his fault though when his mid laner gifted over that early opportunity to MilkyWay.
Yeah, pretty tough to be up against MilkyWay's Lilia with a kill. It's not ideal, is it? As Hoya and ZDZ have both hit level 6 at this point. All kinds of level 6 is always quite a nerve-wracking moment in any game. Grubs are up on the top side of the map. Drake is up on the bottom side of the map. TT have loved those Drakes historically. As Life moves into the mid lane, so does Feather and Beichuan desperately fighting over Prio here, but Care has such a huge wave to work with. That's a bonus hit onto Ucal as well. In the meantime, MilkyWay will grab these Grubs pretty much uncontested.
Yeah, one thing which you can see on show there is, of course, press the attack being really strong. Of course, we saw that Fleet Footwork and Absorb Life be nerfed a little bit. Life should be okay here, but the fact that Lucian and Tristana can kind of get away with not taking Fleet Footwork, I think that Tristana maybe should still take it all the same because it's a very powerful rune for her. It just allows Lucian to escape some of those nerfs a little bit more. We saw Blade nerfed, we saw Shiv and Kraken be nerfed for a lot of these level 1, well, the first items rather, coming in from AD carries, but he's managed to escape the nerfs a fair bit, and that's why we're still seeing him being first picked here right now.
I definitely think he's also just, like, purely subjectively, one of the more interesting AD mid laners available. I feel like he's got a lot of skill expression as a champion. I feel like you can be punished very hard for the way that Lucian has to dive into the action from play. It's very easy to make a big mistake and be taken apart for it. Speaking of that, Care has stepped
like
up.
this.
But he dashes just before Ucal can get that buster shot. Nicely played by Care.
Very nearly had ourselves the Tristana insect. I think Ucal maybe should have just pulled the buster shot earlier, not chanced the dash coming out, but still, Care gets away with that one, and putting on display exactly what you were saying. You can overstep as Lucian. You can kind of buy into your own hype a little bit too much and think, wow, I'm taking such good trades. I'm under enemy turret. This is not where I want to be when 3 people walk into my lane. But Care gets away with that all the same. Beichuan manages to get himself into the right point to potentially threaten Care there. Sadly, doesn't get himself a summoner out of that one. The game has slowed down after that early mistake from Ucal. Haven't seen that first dragon taken just yet either.
So, fairly quiet one, honestly. I don't know if you guys at home remember, but we were just talking about the stats. It's not quiet anymore. Care barely survives as Ucal is sent away as well. MilkyWay trying to get into the place. Will Seed, I guess, was on cooldown for the time being. And I love how much presence Beichuan is having towards this mid lane. When you've got a Tristana Ivan, you want to use him as a duo.
And particularly because the Ivern can give that auto attack on hit buff from people standing in the brushes as well. Can actually give Tristana an unexpected amount of extra damage in the way that you don't expect coming through. Well, that's what unexpected is. But Beichuan, see if he can combo up with that one again. Is off of vision.
Oh, Deokdam in so much trouble here. Big damage there. Root comes up through True Shot Barrage onto Life, and a flash to finish the job. MilkyWay, though, maybe can carry. 3v3 here. His Feather caught by the Swirl Seed. MilkyWay looking for the multi-ultimate and will find 2. Beichuan, the target, is in flies Deokdam, but they don't have the damage to finish the job. And 1xN is still firing away, still hitting these Mystic shots. ZDZ now caught in the top side as well. Will the fights ever end?
You were just complaining that it was a bit of a quiet game. The bloodiness of the FPX coming out once more. First game, yeah, they had a line into our commentary right there. But yeah, I mean, it's something for FPX down in this bot side. You do get a kill for Deokdam. He's not on a champion this time, which has to win lane, but it's one which got more gold out of that laning phase all the same. So that's a good start there from FPX. Deokdam, hopefully on this Kai'Sa, which he's done some heroics on before, can get some value out of it. Life now in mid lane.
Ucal caught by the knock-up. Good combo from Care as well, but Feather here to ruin the play for Life. Now, was the quickness used as well as they jump back in because Beichuan's here with a shield. Care caught by the buster shot, but Ucal now caught. No lilting lullaby available. So MilkyWay can't turn it into anything more, but we go from absolutely nothing to suddenly a 3v3 in the mid lane with no objectives up.
I've no idea really what they were looking for there. either. Ucal jumps in, immediately has to pop the Buster Shot. Now MilkyWay alive, they are full HP. They see this on the sweeper.
Oh, I thought he was going to get the recall, but no. Beichuan caught. The shield's coming up through as well as MilkyWay pulled into the death row, flashes over the wall, but so does Hoya and finds his 1v1. Now Care tries to answer off the back of the death row, but that is one beefy Mordekaiser, and he's shredding FPX. Beichuan here with the shields to set up his carries. His feather might fall. The Q3 finds him, but ZDZ gives his own life to make that happen. Care and Life baiting in River because Deokdam's not far away, but Killer Instinct's on cooldown. Grub started by FPX.
So this is the problem with this kind of game. Actually quite hard to tell what the implications are after a big fight comes through, because a lot of these fights are happening off of opportunistic picks and then they're spiraling out of this. This starts from a sweeper. This is not necessarily a quote-unquote premeditated move, but Hoya, fantastic play from him. Notices that Beichuan will die, and you know, he has that Shadow Realm. I guess he has himself a trap card from Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, as he just comes out of nowhere. FPX really just misjudged where he's going to be. But then he gets to stack up his Conqueror, gets to keep his passive going as well. Mordekaiser has really high base damages if you let him get into a fight like this. At least CDC manages to get one back, but most of this play is FPX fighting off more than they could shoot.
Oh, hang on. Grub's happening to Beichuan. Manages to steal one. It's a good knockup coming out from Life. As here comes Hoya. He's beefy, but that's two asleep, and Beichuan won't fall. The shields are gone, and it means FPX can push on forwards. Feather will fall as well, and it's two for the Birds of Red.
Right, so FPX bit off more than they could chew in the fight before this. Now it's TT's turn to do the same. 5 grubs over to FPX. 1 is stopped from being taken by TT. They stopped the 6 going over, but this is a bit worrying. They are not the ones with the insurmountable power in this early game. They didn't even have someone like 1xN to bring his extra damage in there as well. So FPX walk away with a pretty big objective lead this time. They get themselves the dragon, they get themselves those 5 grubs, and now if Care, who's getting himself towards that first item, can get himself onto some towers as well, those 5 grubs are going to become a bit of a thorn in the side of TT.
Look at his build from Deokdam as well. Blade of the Rune King first on Kaiser. That's not something you see often. But yeah, the smite comes in. Beichuan, I think, just really overstepping for this one. Good Q3 from CDC.
And we did say, you know, the Realm of Death, the unexpected damage came out of Mordekaiser early. That's one big thing. You're taking fights too quickly now as TT as well. You don't have that Buster Shot or the big ultimates available, and that means that you don't have your full arsenal at the ready. Dragon up in a minute. I guess TT will have to fight for that one, not to give the 2 early dragons over. It's a big, I'm going to call it a faux pas. It's just a big mistake to give 5 grubs over and then also early dragons, because what that means is later into the game, the team with the grubs can give up dragons and slaughter your turrets, because they have that extra grub ability to do that. So TT, expect to see them contest for this one. They don't realistically want to give the Herald over either, but this is where the problems of this early game are going to start coming through.
They've also got a side lane Lucian, which just so happens to be pretty good at using those grubs.
Pretty good.
MilkyWay looking towards the bottom lane now as he does get a little tag onto 1xN. No real opportunity to follow up for the rest of the team, but keeping my eyes on Deokdam here. And for that Blade of the Rune King as a first item, it's not exactly the tankiest team that he's up against either. Obviously Mordekaiser. But maybe that's it. Maybe Deokdam is building for the death realm. Hang on, deep TP. Speaking of the Mordekaiser, Hoya behind enemy lines, and he looks immediately for MilkyWay. Where you gonna go, little dear? I want myself a 1v1. The big man of metal turns out pretty good against wildlife. Who could have seen that coming?
Chomps down again, swings the mace down, and MilkyWay goes down with it. MilkyWay, much better early game from him on the whole, but he's not been immune to the shenanigans of this early game. This is important. What did we say before this? There were problems with giving up those 2 dragons to the Grubs team. They are still going to give them... Oh, Hoya's just caught himself now.
Oh, Deokdam looking to grab himself a kill as well. Hoya should go down. The shield slow come through. Actually, Hoya turns out completely invincible.
Oh, he does have an ability which helps him do that, but so FPX, they get themselves that tower on top side, but they do give up that dragon on bot side. TT, they don't get at least hit with that really annoying question of what do you do against a dragon stacking Grubs team. That'll be something which they solve through, but they do lose themselves that tower on the top side. They need to be afraid of giving over too much gold over to this Lucian particularly. I think is a huge problem with that. I've also just been checking the background as well with the Kai'Sa builds. I would believe this build, it's probably just there because the Kraken Slayer and the Shiv have both been nerfed now, so it's like, well, okay, Blade is still a fine first item, so you can still get yourself your big upgrades that way. We have been seeing some mains going towards the Blade of the Ruined King Rage Blade into Terminus build, which really does make you that low-range duelist. So maybe it is to say, right, there's a Mordekaiser. I don't want to lose that Mordekaiser in a 1v1.
Yeah, maybe. We'll have to see where the build goes from here. Certainly trust Deokdam to have done his research. Expect him to be bringing his best here in playoffs. Remember, it's single elimination at this early stage of playoffs. And FPX already one game down. They're going to do everything they can to fight back into this series. So far, with a 2,000 gold lead and a Herald in the mid lane, they're looking like a favorite here in the second game. That's a second tower and a double knockup from Life as well. Beautiful bit of play from FPX and an all-out from ZDZ. Takes himself to the wrong side of the map and suddenly has to flash over the wall instead. But nobody going down. ZDZ 1 HP is 1xN hunting for the Mystic shot, but Ucal flashes away from the knockup of 1xN. Finishes ZDZ. Now they look for more as Feather finds that Zenith Blade and TT answer the mid lane.
FPX, great trade in terms of the turrets. They have the 5 grubs. They take themselves that inner turret and the outer in mid lane, so good structural damage done. But they overpush again. This is something which really plagued them in that first game, and I wonder whether this is something that TT will continually punish from this point. Good kills back from TT means that despite the towers going over, it's not that big of a gold trade because TT get the kills back. We need to see FPX really clean up these oversteps because this is not really working out in their favor in either of the games that we've seen so far. They do go with the Herald, they do get themselves that extra turret, but then they're kind of stuck in the meat grinder after this point. They don't get onto the carries. 1xN's doing good work, and I don't know what this whole angle is from ZDZ. That's aggressive, that's bold, and it really doesn't help them after that point, but you can see once the overstep has happened, the chase down with resets from Tristana, yeah, a bit bold from Ucal, but it's still there, and you have the root callers too, is really, really nasty. Great flash predict there from Beichuan too.
Yep, Beichuan and Feather both immediately dive onto Life to find the bonus kill there. Feels like FPX, it's a good call in the mid lane. They do get the 2 towers for it. They lose 2 kills. Honestly, maybe worth it. With the 2 side lane tier 1s going down, having a tier 2 down in the mid lane is a really nice advantage in terms of controlling the map for FPX. And I do feel like this game is being accelerated, which with an Ivan double AD carry composition, you're quite happy to go for later game teamfights where you've got more items to work with. I don't know how late this game's really going to go.
Well, the thing about all these towers going down for FPX and that map control you're talking about, yeah, of course that's very, very powerful, but the gold advantage hasn't really exploded with it. And that's going to be a problem. You haven't got to the point where your gold is so crazy that you can burst through the person with the Ivan shields on them. That's a problem that we saw in our series yesterday with an IPL GD. We saw that Ivan comp come through yesterday where you reach a certain amount of gold advantage, and it doesn't matter who the shields are on, they're getting burst out all the same. I don't think FPX can accelerate that to the same kind of level. So I think now the question is on TT to say, can you wave clear safely? Can you still turn up to the objectives in the right kind of timing? We have themselves a dragon up in a minute. They could choose to leave this one go, but I think they're also ready to fight as well, unless Ucal does this.
Double knockup comes out from Life, but it's a huge play from FPX. Double sleep to follow up as well. Who needs to get rid of the Ivan shields when you just get rid of the Ivan?
From hero to zero, that's Ucal hitting the ground once again. Missteps in the early game, missteps here, and this is going to open up the map entirely for FPX. We said, can TT use their wave clear respectfully? Well, no they can't. They walk in, they die, they're going to give up the dragon, they might even give themselves up maybe even a bot lane inner turret as well with the way that Care is pushing in with the 5 grubs. This is a huge one for FPX.
1xN does get caught by the knockup there, but no follow-up from the side of FPX. Drake spawning in just 15 seconds time. They already got 1 this game. They're looking to get a second, and it's Infernal Soul this game as well. FPX really couldn't ask for a better soul to work with. Care's moved up to the top side, but does have that TP available. FPX, are they willing to stick around and try and find a fight here? Feather is going to be the one to face check. Did they really get a second kill in the exact same way as the last
mid lane?
What?
Solo kill.
Deokdam's been solo killed by 1xN off the screen, and suddenly TT are well in for the Drake.
So FPX back off of the dragon, realize they don't have any ultimates, but they still stick around long enough to die to a random kill to the Ezreal. That's going to give a dragon over to TT. This should have been the game-changing moment in the last kind of phase of the game. FPX could have pushed in, got control of that dragon, got themselves an objective advantage. What is happening here? You don't get the single target Q. You walk into a full minion wave and you get absolutely blasted. That is simple stuff with the Kai'Sa. Yes, you do quote-unquote counter the Ezreal, not without your ultimate to give yourself that extra fighting power, and also not without getting that single target Q.
Fantastic bit of play from 1xN, who is having the series of his life so far on this Ezreal. 2 games in a row, just taking over. Phenomenal stuff. And Deokdam caught out there. And I think, you know, believing that he has the advantage at this point in the matchup, he was wrong. He was very much wrong when 1xN playing like this. 2 items now on the Ezreal, nearly fully stacked on his Muramana as well. But Baron's up on the map, and FPX looks straight towards it.
Yeah, so 1xN, so strong. Now, FPX will have their ultimates up again. The big thing about that last play, they didn't have their ults. That was a big change. So, Dragon, of course, down, Baron now up. Can FPX find themselves a big fight with all their tools available?
The fight for mid-prio begins, as it's a 5v5 around the mid lane. Life looking for deep vision, though, while this all goes off. Has this opportunity to just dip into the enemy jungle, drop a control ward, try and fight for a little bit more control for FPX. Look at this damage 1xN is getting out, using that arcane shift aggressively once more. Knows that he's got an Ivan behind him, knows that he's safe to just wail on FPX. Look at the damage from 1xN. He is totally in control of this game.
1xN, in his first LPL playoffs ever, has decided to go Super Saiyan. I thought Ucal was the one with the blue hair. I thought he'd gone Super Saiyan blue. I guess 1xN's just found another form which looks a lot more normal. He has been absolutely astounding on this Ezreal, and I wonder whether the FPX will have to start perma-banning or first picking this Ezreal away in other drafts. You called it out for this one. 1xN, once again, basically 1v4ing for that mid-prio. Now, they could even go towards that top side of the map and start at least clearing out some vision.
Unbelievable performance from still a pretty fresh player, not quite a rookie 1xN, but was last year. It's only his 3rd split. Not looking like it here, as Ucal could be caught in the top side. Great Buster shot. Is it enough, though? Flash from Life, and there's the charm. ZDZ even TP'd in just to steal away the kill from Care, to be honest. But that's Baron, potentially. 30 seconds until Ucal's back.
So, FPX realize they're not winning through mid lane, they win on the side, they start up the Baron, but can they deal with 1xN?
1xN's got to get damage out of this big chunk onto Care. ZDZ tries to flank, but Feather's there on the front line. Big damage onto ZDZ, but he's so hard to get through, and he just buys time for the team. They get into the pit, and it's taken by Deokdam. ZDZ will surely finally fall. 1xN gets him, and in the meantime, Hoya has bought space for his team. He's bought time for his team. Is it enough to finish the health bars? Beichuan and 1xN and Feather have to make the chase down. MilkyWay clears the minion wave as the rest of FPX are just going to try and reset in the brushes. Deokdam abandoned by his team, and he will fall, but it's only 2 in trade for Baron.
You still take that as FPX. That trade of 2 for Baron still working out in favor of them. 1xN putting in a Herculean effort around that Baron, but he was still a carry down on his team. Ucal caught out on that side lane. So FPX showcasing that while, yes, they are losing a lot of the big fights, they have still got themselves that macro feather in their cap. They get themselves a really clean kill onto Ucal and immediately go towards that Baron. Really does help out for them. ZDZ, of course, helps kind of close the door as well. There was a chance that Hoya could flash and then get the Realm of Death onto the enemy jungler to stop that spike coming through. In fact, that's exactly what he did. That's why it goes down to Deokdam instead of someone else. If Beichuan had also gotten in range, that could have been an absolute prime example of a Baron steal with a Mordekaiser in. I think FPX are actually quite lucky to get away with that one.
It really was a game of inches there, the double recall, as Deokdam, I think, actually intentionally buying time there as well for his team as he goes south and throws the W. He's like, look over here, guys. Look at the damage from 1xN across that fight. Hoya doing a bit of heavy lifting himself as well, but obviously Ucal was not a part of it. Only TP'd in right at the end of things. FPX now a 4,000 gold lead as the next Drake will spawn in 30 seconds time.
So there'll be soul point for TT. They don't exactly have themselves much map pressure right now, though. They're against that Baron buff. Ucal has gone towards his top side, so they're giving up this dragon. But this is the bonus of TT taking those earlier dragons. They can say, all right, you got that Baron. You've won this dragon. Don't worry about that. You're not going to get that soul point. And they can now start pushing out those side lanes and start to give themselves some map advantages elsewhere. They don't have to force themselves into this dragon fight, which I think is probably a welcome sigh of relief at this point. They've been winning a lot of these fights, yes, but it has been hard fought in terms of the macro.
as Ucal actually sticks around in the top side, FPX will be able to grab themselves a tier 2 as well as that Drake. So, you know, pushing the top side and trade for the Drake, that would be fine. But pushing the top side and also losing the tier 2 on the bottom side, not ideal for TT really, as they continue to fall further behind. It's 5,000 gold now for FPX. And it does feel like we are slowly inching towards an even series. It's definitely not over just yet though. And I feel like this is something that's always the way with TT. They are a team that it never quite feels like you can count them out. I mean, this composition certainly can fight well later on in the game, but one of the best stats I've got about TT is the fact that they have a 40% win rate with a deficit. This is a team, they are the second best in the league at that. Like, this is a team that even when they're losing, they still, they manage to find a way more than is reasonable.
There was a game versus EDG in the group stage where they did go Nexus to Nexus with 6 grubs, and they thought, well, we want to fight defending our Nexus, let's have a go at it. Ended up walking away with that victory as well. Weirdly, I think FPX are one of the teams which also come away with some of those miraculous victories as well from the jaws of defeat. So both these teams, no strangers to those late game smoke and mirrors miracle performances. TT, they do have a very powerful Ezreal, but that's their point of power. That is it, make no mistake. Ucal is not that point of power right now. We'll have to fight a lot harder to get value out of this champion compared to particularly Care and Deokdam, who are also on very, very powerful points of their own. We've got about 3 minutes until the next Dragon, so that's a long time for the map to kind of evolve beyond that point. Got 2 minutes until that Baron as well. I'm really going to be looking at the macro setup from FPX. I've been loving their vision control. I think they have been approaching these fights largely in the right way. When they realized they weren't winning through that mid lane priority, they went towards side lanes. They've been trying to make sure they have a breadth of options available to them. With 3 minutes to set up for this Dragon, I want to see with FPX, with the advantage, can set themselves up that real killer blow around the next objectives.
Feels like the quiet fall of the storm, doesn't it? It feels like we've got a moment of reprieve for the two teams. They both know what's at stake here. This one best of 5 could be their last here in 2024. This could be the last they play. But if they make it further into playoffs, there's still a chance of making it to regionals, especially for FPX, who did well in spring. There's a reasonable chance of making it to regionals and potentially making it to worlds, even if you don't go that far in playoffs. But 1xN's gone too deep. He was the hero. He was meant to carry the team, and he's caught out of position. And it means the rest of TT fall asunder. FPX, just when it looked like they were out, just after being destroyed in game number 1, they find their moment and decimate TT. Fantastic little fight coming out from them. Great pick. And it's turned into an inhibitor, and it might just turn into the game.
Well, FPX won out in the macro. They set up the jaws to be shot onto 1xN in the mid lane. The hero of TT finds himself at an inglorious end.
FunPlus Phoenix rise from the ashes after losing game number 1. It's a tired old analogy for the team, but just when you think it's been used to death, it rises from the ashes once more again.
TT, great first game. Second game, they had some good fights, but they really were second best in the macro this time to FPX. They played the side lanes better, they set up these traps, and they played the tower trades better across the entire game. So FPX showcasing that they do, again, have those fundamentals of an Ascension team. They did make it up into our upper echelons of the LPL, and this was one of our worries. You know, TT, they haven't really been pushed like that in the macro so much in this split so far. They honestly haven't really been pushed like that since they played against FPX back in that group stage before that Rumble came through, and now we are 1-1.
We certainly are. TT being answered here as FPX managed to even things up. Like I said, great game from him until that final moment. How many times have we seen that from Big Ezreal?